Hello everybody, it's still the new year. We're only a few days in, so once again, Happy New Year. Happy 2019. This is going to be a wonderful year. Have you downloaded all the free stuff that we put up over the last few days? Did you download all the free multi-tracks, all the free cheat sheets? Go to that page, it'll be flying around here. Download all that stuff. We're big, we're bad, we're back. It's another FAQ Friday. Okay, so we're back with another FAQ Friday, frequently asked questions. Please, of course, hit the subscribe button if you haven't already subscribed. Okay, let's get stuck in with some really wonderful questions. What do you think about working on vocal sound during a tracking session? I do and I don't. I don't track with any EQ on a vocal except maybe high passing if I've got, rumble from cars and stuff outside if I'm in an environment that's not perfect, AC noise, sometimes the singer's like tapping their foot and you've got some low rumble. Sometimes the singer's in a booth and the band's playing out there and you're hearing boom, 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 boom. So I high pass. So I'll do that. I won't EQ otherwise. I'm hoping that I've got a microphone that's going to pick up the vocals pretty evenly and pretty well. But I will compress. I'll compress on the way in. I compress the way I want to hear. And quite often I will use two compressors. There's been times when I've split them into and ran parallel with two sets of compression chains and then molted them back together. I've done all kinds of fun things to get really, really good sounding vocals. However, I don't EQ at all on the way in. Now, that doesn't mean, and what you're probably suggesting, the bigger part of my answer, it doesn't mean that I'm not on the monitoring side EQing. Yes, on the monitoring side, I might open that top end up. I might apply a little bit more compression. I probably am going to give the singer a whole bunch of reverbs and delays, short delays, long delays, short reverbs, long reverbs, blend them so that the singer is happy with what they are hearing. I will do all of those things. So there is some quote unquote processing, working on the sound going on, but it's all post recording. It's not going into the recording. So I will do that. And quite often when I come to mix, it's 90% done because I've done all these things. How do you usually treat vocals with reverb? Do you use it often? Which type, or do you prefer dry parts? I tend to use reverb on the vocals in the verses, short reverbs. I tend to use short reverbs on the vocals in the verses. It really depends. I'll go something, less lush, but typically, not always, but typically verses are pretty broken down. Choruses tend to be, not all the time, some modern choruses are opposite what I'm about to describe, but usually, typically, a chorus goes super wide, guitars go left, guitars go right, keys come in, strings, whatever it might be, they get big. So the vocal comes up in volume to, counteract that increase in production quality, and reverbs tend to get louder and often much longer. So that's the first thing I'll do. With delays, I might have a slap delay running at all times just to thicken the vocal, sweeten it up a little bit. Unless I want it to sound like a 50s rock and roll song, I usually have it fairly low. I just have it just to blur the edges a bit, just to give it a little bit of pizzazz. And I'll often distort that delay as well, just so it adds energy. I'll also do the vocal thickening trick. All of these things are laid out. There's videos and stuff that you can watch on this that we will put in the blog to go with this, like the different reverbs, the different delay techniques, all of this different stuff that I do is I talk about all the time, and they're tricks that you should use. I don't have a one size fits all, but I do have a lot of different reverbs and delays that I like to use. I also, on delays, often, as you probably know, again, there will be a link to the vocal delay tips that I do, but one of the things I'll do is I'll sidechain compress the delay. So every time the vocal sings, it goes through a delay, but it also compresses after the delay, meaning that every time I'm singing louder, ba-dum, ba-da, it's squashing the delay down. And as soon as da-dum, da-da, I stop finishing, it goes da-da-da-da. So there's a delay there that's present all the time. It's quiet, but it gets louder between, allowing the vocals not to sound muddy. Because if you've got a lot of delays, go 1, 2, 2, ba, da, ba, 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 they can overlap and you'll end up not understanding what the singer's saying. So it's a good little trick. Anyway, lots of videos about this, lots of stuff. I have a lot of different videos on vocal mixing. I've got some recently. I've got an old one, which is at about 600,000 views. There's some really popular ones. And just check them all out. We'll put them all in one place for you. When tracking vocals, do you compress lightly to tame the vocal or tend to commit on the way in? What's your go-to comp and approach? It really depends. Many of you know that the UK Sound 1173, for instance, is something I designed with Michael Stucker and BAE built. The reason why I did that is because it's a 1073 style mic pre with an 1176 style compressor. Those are two of my favorite things. However, that isn't all that I use. When given the choice, like in my environment here, I have a BAE 1028, which is a 1073 style compressor, a 1073 style mic pre going into a 165, which is a DBX VU 160, but the 165 has a variable attack and release. That then daisy chains into an 1176, set to 20:1, only picking up peaks. That way I get gentle compression from the DBX 165, and then I get more aggressive limiting from the 1176, albeit only occasionally. That to me is how I commit to compression on the way in. Often, not always, but often I'll run two chains. When I worked with Issac Slade, he was young and very, very dynamic in his vocal. So I went out of my mic pre and went into two independent chains. One was a 160 into an 1176, set just to gently compress the quiet stuff, and then the other one only came in when he wailed. So what that did is that allowed it to always sound fat and not sound choked. It's a great trick. Then those two were multied back together into one input. So that is a much more sophisticated way of working, but it does give me the exact results that I want, and I get a big fat vocal at all times. It's something I can get into a lot more detail in a future video. It's probably something that we could probably spend 20 minutes plus just talking about. So look forward to that. So please hit the notification bell. Don't forget to subscribe. And also, after you subscribed, leave me a bunch of comments and questions below. Your comments and questions are what make up this Fact Friday. So if you have something you really want to know and you want us to answer it in a video, please leave that comment below. And, give us some of your experiences. What are your experiences recording vocals? What reverbs and delays do you use? Let us know. Let's get that discussion going. This is a wonderful community, and I love how everyone helps each other out. All right, so the next question is rather good. It says, how do you mix a vocal duet or duo? I love that question. So I've done quite a few. Going back to Issac Slade, I did one with Issac Slade and Emmylou Harris, and they did a duet of Boulder to Birmingham. I'm saying it like an American. In England, we'd say Boulder to Birmingham. This song, Boulder to Birmingham, is pretty much her signature song, and she is a phenomenal singer, and she did an amazing job of singing it. When I came to mix it, of course, there was whole sections where Issac was only singing the verse or she was singing the verse, but when they came together and sang the choruses, and I was mixing in those days in the box, but through a Neve. So what I did is I took the vocals, say it was on 23 and 24, and I panned Issac 10% that way, and Emmylou 10% the other way. Now, if you closed your eyes and muted them and only had one up at a time, you could barely, I'll say it one more time, barely tell that it wasn't center. I mean, it was about as centered as you could get, but it was 10%. It was like, But what did it do? When they sang together, it was amazing. The difference was enormous. It was amazing. Just that little 10% like this, it was like I put a dB on each of them. It was incredible how much separation was created, because 10% one way and 10% the other way may only be 10% off the center, but yes, how many mathematical geniuses are out there can calculate this? Yeah, they were 20% away from each other, 20 degrees away from each other. It's actually quite a big deal, 20 degrees away from each other. They're 10 degrees this way, 10 degrees that way. It was a huge, huge deal. So it really, really helped. So with duets and duos, that's what I typically do. Now, what you can do in your DAW is have lead singer number 1 coming down the middle. Then when lead singer number 2 comes in and lead singer number 1 disappears, they go to the middle. When they sing together, 10 and 10. Trust me, you will love it. It's not going to make a difference if somebody's slightly over to the right speaker or slightly over to the left speaker. Will it make a difference? Yeah, maybe a little tiny bit, but it is a subtle little tiny trick that really, really helps. The other thing to do is to not share a reverb. Give them slightly different reverbs and different textures. Give them something which makes them a little separate. Another thing you could think about doing would be using a monoverb on each of them, a slightly different monoverb on each of them, preferably with a tiny, tiny amount of pitching on it, something that just gets them out of the way of each other, and put the mono underneath each other. That is a nice little trick as well. Not very loud though, just a little one, just there to help push it forward from where it is. That's not to say you shouldn't use stereo reverbs as well, but a mono reverb just tucked underneath is a really nice trick. I hope that all helps. I love doing duet stuff. It's really exciting. What do you mean when you say dynamic reverb? Actually, when I say that, I was actually talking about dynamic delays and dynamic reverbs, and it's exactly the same principle I talked about a minute ago with delays. So what I'll do is I'll have the reverb, and then I'll have the vocal sending to the reverb, as you would expect, but I'll also have it sending to, yes, you guessed it, a compressor at the end of the reverb. So every single time the singer sings, it compresses the reverb. Every time the singer stops, it releases it and allows the reverb to come up after it. Now, there are plugins that are already dynamic reverbs, but you can create them yourself just by taking a stock compressor after any stock reverb and then send the vocal into that compressor as a side chain controlling the reverb. So every time the vocal sings, it will compress, the vocal will key it and compress it, and then when the vocal stops singing, threshold comes up, reverb breathes, and it's a wonderful trick. So thank you ever so much for all of those amazing vocal questions. That was really a fun one. Between vocal recording and vocal mixing, we covered a lot of stuff. Please hit the subscription button, so subscribe, notification bell, but most importantly, leave a bunch of comments and questions below. We get a couple of hundred comments on every video without fail. I really appreciate it. Please interact with each other, answer each other's questions. I love coming in and seeing the interaction that goes on. And please leave some more questions for us for Fact Friday. I really appreciate it. Have a marvelous time recording and mixing, and I'll see you all again very, very soon. Now that it's New Year, don't forget to download all the free goodies.